Hi there, Grand J here, and today's video we're going to be discussing some of the early previews of the cards coming out in the Opus 4 Final Fantasy TCG set. Here's a list of cards on the screen, and these are going to be the cards that we'll be discussing in today's video. Do note that something that's interesting that's coming out in the set is that we're going to be introducing a new card type called Monsters. So it hasn't been confirmed yet, but from what we have gathered, we believe that the official rulings on Monsters are they come into play and they sit in a separate zone to your forwards and your backups and everything else, and they don't have a power attached to them unless they have an ability that turns them into forwards. They're completely separate from backups and forwards, and they act in their own distinct card category. It's also under the impression that these cards don't have summoning sickness, so they can be using their abilities and can be attacking on the turn that they enter play. So without further ado, let's get on to the cards. So the first card that we'll be talking about is Zack. So Zack is a 3-cost Zack that's a backup and has an EX burst. So when it comes into play, choose a Cloud or a Soldier in your break zone and add it to your hand. So this is an interesting card. Obviously it's Zack, so it's going to be supporting or backing up Cloud. In this case, it allows you to grab a Cloud, Cloud or Soldier from your break zone and put it back into your hand. I haven't really sort of sat down to look at what other soldiers there are in the game, so that will be another interesting thing to know about this card. It is a backup though, so it does lock you out from using the Zack forwards, but currently there's not a lot of great Zack forwards in the sense that the 3-cost Zack from set 1 isn't particularly great, and 5-cost Zack hasn't really seen a lot of play recently. It's been very finicky card to see play. I'm not sure if this card is going to take over the slot that 5-cost Zack would be playing, but definitely if I do see the new Cloud from this set being more relevant, then this Zack might be the backup to back him up. So it's also the EX burst, which is a handy thing to know. So if you do discard a Cloud early in the game, or if you do cycle through one of them, then you can grab one back. So this card will be interesting to see whether this is going to replace the 5-cost Zack. I think there's potential for this card. Next card is Marsh. So it's a 3-cost forward at 7,000 power, so that's on curve. And its ability is dull an active forward you control, choose one forward blocking Marsh, deal the power of the forward you dulled to the forward blocking Marsh. So in a way, this is some people have described it as a more situational Amaranth in terms of you can dull one of your forwards to deal its damage to a forward blocking Marsh. So it is piece of removal and allows you to trade attacks from your forwards to deal damage to your opponent's forwards. Interestingly enough, this card I think is actually pretty solid, actually. Obviously it'll depend upon the support for his class and all that in the new set, but this card, in my mind, I think it's extremely strong with Brave type cards. So if you have Brave type cards like Guy or other like sort of Earth type forwards that can be attacking in Brave, then you attack with Marsh, you can then subsequently use those Brave cards to deal damage to forwards. So I think this card's actually quite strong. I think it will see play, and yeah, definitely this is going to really synergize with forwards that either reactivate or forwards that have ability to attack with Brave. Next card we have is Rogue. So Rogue is a 2-cost forward at 5,000 power. It's a standard unit. So that's pretty good numbers for a standard unit actually. But whenever Rogue deals damage to opponent's forward, dull and freeze. And so this is actually quite a strong ability actually when you think about it. So it's pretty good on defense, and even attacking on offense, it acts as kind of like a smaller minor Renault in the sense that if your opponent does try to block it, it dulls it and freezes it. So if your opponent does block with one of their bigger guys, it does lock them up to allow your other forwards to attack through. The fact that it's a 2-cost standard unit at 5,000 power is actually pretty solid. Typically you'd be expecting like 2-cost 6,000 power, but it is standard unit, so it does gain the standard unit support through DGS Soldier, Deep Ground Soldier, and Warrior of Light. So there's plenty of support for these sort of cards. So I think that this card, it definitely will see play. I don't think, I'm not sure if it will see play in a sort of more aggressive weenie ice deck, but I definitely could see it fitting in there. But I think this is probably going to be sitting in a sort of ice water, ice wind sort of standard unit deck where this guy can get a little bit stronger. You can set him as a forward. If he's got first strike from Warrior Light, that's pretty good. If he gets plus 2,000 from Deep Ground Soldier, then that's also pretty good as well. This card is pretty good value, so all you need is really some support to get his numbers a little bit higher, or to be able to recur him, or to play him more easily, and this card's got a lot of value to it. I think this card's going to be will see play, and that's surprising for a standard unit. Next card is Hope. So Hope is a 4-cost forward at 5,000 power, so it's significantly below the curve. But when Hope enters the field, search for a card named Alexander and put it to your hand. He also has a secondary ability that allows him to dull, to choose one forward and activate it. So that's pretty handy as well. So This card is going to depend upon the new Alexander releasing the set. I've been told that it's very likely that they'll be releasing a new Alexander in this new set. So this card's effectiveness will highly depend on the strength of that new Alexander. So it highly depends upon that. Potentially, I could see this card being played with like 1 or 2 copies of the old Alexander, 1 or 2 copies of the new Alexander. Depending on how well they complement each other, you can use Hope to search for either Alexander depending on the situation. So this is pretty good. Obviously, it is Hope, so there is some support with this. You do have Nora that does search for a Hope, so you can sort of Nora into Hope and then play Hope and do other stuff. So this does have some interesting plays to it. At 5,000 power, it's a little bit small for a non-standard unit forward. Technically, if you discount the cost of getting another card, you really treat it technically as a 2-cost forward. So at a 2CB4, 5,000 power, it's alright. But I think this card's actually interesting because after you do use this ability to gain you something, he also has an ongoing ability that he can dull to reactivate a forward. So that's a handy little bonus as well. So I think this card is actually going to be a very interesting support card. Even though it does cost 4, and 4s are typically your sort of like combat forwards, the fact that he's got some support, he can search, it's going to be an interesting card. I think this sort of fills in a very similar role of what like a Steiner would sort of fill in the FF9 category right now. So I think this is going to be an interesting card. I'd be interested to see what the new Alexander brings, and that will determine really how effective this card is going to be. Next card is Ritz. It's a free cost forward at 7,000 power. So characters you control cannot be returned to their owner's hand by your opponent's abilities or summons. If you control Shara, Ritz gains plus 2,000 power. So of course, this card's main focus is to prevent your opponent from being able to return forwards back to your hand using like your opponent's summons or abilities. So that's typically only going to counter water, although there may be a very, very specific niche use in that it can counter the legendary Valor 4 from wind, although you typically won't see that. So this is going to be like, one of those cards that Fire can use to hate on water. It will certainly depend upon the metagame of what water is playing in the new set, whether they're going to switch to Famfrit stuff, whether they're going to switch to Choo-Choo Lane stuff, whether Leviathan's still relevant. Pretty sure that like Leviathan is always going to be relevant in water, so this card will see some relevance as a counterplay card. If water does become even more dominating in the metagame, then this will see play. But I think that its ability to stop bouncing is such a narrow, like, ongoing ability that's only good against like one matchup, that I don't think this will really see much play unless like there's significant amount of water in the metagame. So potentially it could be one of those cards that you like can tech into your fire build depending on the meta. Also, the fact that it gets plus 2,000 power if you control Shara, this will also depend on whether Shara's a 4, whether Shara's a backup, and so on and so forth. If Shara's a backup, then I could potentially see this card seeing more regular play, but yeah, we'll highly depend upon that. Next card, and this is an exciting card, people have been getting pretty excited about this, is Shento. We get the second Shento in this game right now. It's a 6-cost forward at 9,000 power. When Shento receives damage, deal the same amount of damage to all forwards other than Shento on the field. All forwards broken from this effect are removed from the game. So that's actually pretty interesting. In addition, it's also got an S ability, so for S and Free Earth and Dull, deals 5,000 to all forwards, including itself. So obviously the S ability combos into its own ability in that it basically deals 5,000 to everyone, 5,000 to itself, and then that spreads another 5,000 damage to everyone, and then removes a whole bunch of dudes from the field as well. This card's interesting. I feel that this is probably in the same category as Legendary Deleter, in the sense that this card on paper seems like really strong or really powerful, but in actuality, it's probably going to see less. It's going to see probably less play than you may think. At 6 costs, you are discarding cards, so it is a big investment to put down. I think that I treat it as a sort of complementary card to Deleter, in the sense that Deleter's ability is to make it really imposing on your opponent to use abilities on him. Shantoto's effect makes it really imposing on your opponent to attack you. So Shantoto hard counters combat, Deleter hard counters abilities. This card, your opponent never wants to attack, especially if they got any sort of field. Shantoto being there is actually really dangerous. That being said though, Shantoto does spread damage to all forwards, including your own forwards. So it's one of those cards where you want it to be like pretty much your only forward, and then your opponent's like got a whole bunch of forwards. But that still doesn't like really save you, because if your opponent is playing sort of Rushy or Winning Sword deck, more often than not they're going to use some sort of effect to either disable your Shantoto or to remove from the field, and then all of a sudden you've got no other forwards to back you up. And if they don't, then sometimes they will attack into your Shantotto, spread some damage that blows up the other forwards that the Shantotto player has, and so it's an almost equal trade in that regard. So yeah, I think Shantotto on paper looks really cool, really fantastic, really fun, but I think in practice it's going to be very hard to force your opponent to fight it. It's the same situation with deleted. There are plenty of times where you put a deleted down. There are some very narrow times where your opponent can't remove it, but when your opponent does have answers, they'll just use those answers to get rid of him and then send the rest of the guys through. Shantotto is actually really dangerous to your own allies. It's a very difficult card to use. If anything, people have been sort of theorizing, putting this card into like some fire earth stuff where you can nuke your own guys, nuke your opponent for twice as hard, etc. I don't think this is a way to use Shantotto. I feel that Shantotto is probably going to be a big control effect, like a big forward in a control deck. So I feel it might see play in stuff like water or a wind deck, and it's going to be like your solo forward that's going to win you games, and it's just going to be going in to fight your opponent, and then you've got support for it. You don't want this sitting around other forwards, because Shantotto doesn't play nice with other forwards. Another big issue is that by having the Shantotto on the field, you cannot put down the 7-cost Shantotto, and vice versa. If you've got 7-cost Shantotto, you can't put this guy down. So is it really worth playing this forward and be in a situation where you can't cast Shantotto, or alternatively be in a situation where you do play Shantotto and you can't play this forward? And I'm tossing up about that, and I don't think I'm convinced just yet. Next card, and it's the first monster that we've revealed from the set, is Dragon. So it's a 2-cost monster, and its ability is, it's got 2 abilities. So first ability is, for 1 lightning and put Dragon into the break zone, choose 1 monster or 4 or less and break it. So obviously this card is to counter other monsters or to remove other monsters. So because there are no removal effects so far for monsters, so things destroy or deal damage to forwards, obviously we're going to see cards that affect monsters in certain ways as well. So yeah, Dragon is kind of like an equivalent to using being able to cast Odin, like 4-cost Odin to break monsters. So depending on how good monsters are, or whether we're going to see them being implemented into decks, this is going to determine how prevalent this card's going to be. In addition, it's also got a secondary ability of pay lightning and pay 1, put Dragon into break zone, choose 1 forward or 4 or less and break it. So in this regard, it's kind of like it's an Odin that you can sort of pay to use later. So you pay the cost, put it in now, and then later on when you do want to use its ability to break it, you can effectively Odin. So you can pay half of it now, pay half of it later. This may replace Odin, depends on how summon heavy or how much support there is for Odin and summons in lightning. But this card I think probably will see play. It will certainly depend on how prevalent monsters are going to be. Yeah, I think it's a solid card, and yeah, they'll probably see play in lightning. Next card is Behemoth. Behemoth is a 3-cost monster, has no power, but for 1 lightning, until the end of turn, Behemoth becomes a 4 with 8,000 power. From my understanding, and this could be wrong, so big disclaimer here, monsters have haste, so they don't have summoning sickness, so potentially this card could come in and be a monster that can attack with 8,000 power on the first turn when it enters play. Potentially, I'm not sure, don't quote me on that one. But, so this card seems interesting. Oh yeah, in addition, he's also got a secondary ability of, when Behemoth receives damage from a forward, Behemoth deals damage of half that damage to the forward dealing that damage. So if he fights another forward and they deal it damage, then Behemoth then deals half that damage, rounded back up to the nearest, rounded up to the nearest 1,000 power back to it. So it's a really difficult, creature to block. So obviously Behemoth really sort of makes sense in that regard. If it's confirmed that monsters don't have summoning sickness, then this card is actually very interesting. So it's basically a forward that you can just bank. So it's a monster. If your opponent doesn't have stuff to remove monsters, then it's a forward that it's a monster that you can turn into a forward, attack with 8,000 power, and then at the end of turn it becomes a monster again. So it's kind of safe from certain backup effects that might be able to destroy forwards. And it's just kind of sitting there, and it's kind of immune to AoE abilities while it's not a forward. So it's actually a very, very interesting card, and it's very difficult to block. So in general, your opponent is going to either have to block with something that's bigger than it and then trade it against Behemoth, or they just run over whatever forward is attacking it. So that's going to be very interesting. I don't know where it's going to see play. It definitely on paper looks strong, so I think it will see play. But it will depend upon how much hate for monsters there are, how good removing monsters or non-monsters are going to be. That's going to determine this card. But I think on paper it looks very strong, and I think we'll probably see play, assuming there's not too much anti-monster hate, which I don't think there'll be too much in this set so far. Next card is Tongari. So it's a free cost backup that has EX burst. When Tongari enters the field, search for a card named Mira or a card named Tomberries and add it to your hand. Don't know what Mira is, don't know what Tomberries is. This card is going to highly depend upon A, the color of Mira / Tomberries, and B, how good Mira and Tomberries are. So there have been many cards of this similar nature. So a good example is King Tycoon that searches for Lena, that searches for Faris, and Leonora that searches for Palom and Porum. So Leonora sees no play because Palom and Porum virtually see no play as well. And because it's a different color to Palom, and similarly with King Tycoon, Lena's good, Faris might be alright, but the thing that King Tycoon has to be a different color to Lena makes it really, really difficult. So yeah, this card is going to depend upon how the quality of those cards and like the coloration. So depending on those cards, we may or may not see this card. And finally, the card that people were getting pretty excited about is the new Cloud in this set. So there's a new Light Cloud in this set. It's a free cost forward at 7,000 power. It has an EX burst. So when Cloud enters the field, choose one forward an opponent controls. If you control a category 7 forward other than Cloud, deal it 7,000 damage. It's got an S ability, so for fire, 1 dull, choose one opposing forward, deal it 8,000 damage and 4,000 damage to all other forwards your opponents control. This card, I think, is going to be very interesting. It's going to change up really how the sort of cloud-based FF7 decks work. So right now, the cloud-based FF7 decks are all about using Zac to get in your 4-cost legendary cloud, Brave attack with him, and then use Omni Slash whenever you need to, right? This cloud is a cloud that sort of comes in, deals good value, and doesn't have an oppressive ongoing ability in terms of he doesn't have Brave, so he can't Brave Omni Slash. So he can use Blade Beam, but that's typically going to be in a situation where you have to deal with an 8,000 power forward. So that's something to consider as well. I think, considering the new Zac, this card actually is more relevant in the sense that this sort of new like FF7 build might be more heavily based around EXs, in the sense that now FF7 has like a lot of really good EX bursts in terms of it's got stuff like Zangan, you've got Zac now, you've got Cloud now. So potentially this could be like a EX heavy FF7 fire or something else deck, right? That being said, this Cloud's a light card, so you can splash him into other colors that don't necessarily run fire. So if you forego the ability to use his S ability, you can chuck him in as like a 7,000 power nuke in other colors that don't like necessarily play fire, but have that have category 7 forward. So Ice is a good example. So the DGS soldiers are 7, Genesis is 7, Earth deck like Vincent deck with WRO members, they're all very relevant like colors that you can put this light cloud into for something that's got like a good bit of removal that can come in, that has a decent body. You forgo the ability to use the ability to use the S ability, but like yeah, it's a value card in the same way that the Light Zidane is a value card. This cloud is a value card. It's not an ongoing control card. It's a value card. I think this card will see play. Definitely, it's going to be like a bit of a shift in terms of like Cloud's role in the deck, but like I could definitely see situations where like if you're playing Earth and you just got some WROs out, you just put a Cloud in to nuke an opponent for 7,000 damage, and that's pretty good. From my interpretation of the rulings, I think it's a similar situation as Pain in that when he enters the field, if you control like an FF7, when he enters the field, this effect adds on the stack and will resolve irrespective of whether the F7 forward is still on the field. So I don't believe your opponent can use a piece of removal to remove a secondary category 7 to stop this effect. So if that's the case, then this effect is significantly stronger. So you just play this card, deal 7,000, your opponent has no ability to stop this effect by removing the other forward. So yeah, I think this card is pretty cool. Another little tidbit is that there's going to be a gold stamp version on this card as a promo for pre-release. When this set releases at the beginning of December, probably pre-release will be at the end of November if that's the case. So this will be a cool card. It's a heroic, so it's not too expensive. And if you get those promo cards, it's just like a nice little extra touch on your pre-release day. So yeah, so those are the new the previews for the new Opus 4 cards that are coming out at the start of December. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. What do you guys think about these cards? Let me know. And yeah, so definitely let me know of other content that you'd like me to put up. And like, yeah, I'll do my best and I'll try to put it up. Thanks a lot, guys. Catch you later. Grand J out.